Greetings, Internet. HeiseNerd here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseNerd Speaks, the show where I show off my face for radio and sit in front of a microphone and talk a little bit about some current things that might be going on and just some, thoughts that I have going on for the week. So this week, we are going to talk about the possibility of Square-Enix hinting some classic game remakes for the Nintendo Switch. We're going to talk about a little bit about my love for retro games, and I'm going to gush a little bit about those. And then we're going to talk Star Wars because that's coming out at the end of this week. So, starting off, we're going to talk about Square-Enix. So, just today, I read an article that Square-Enix has hinted at the possibility of remaking some of its classic games and releasing them on the Nintendo Switch. I, for one, am pretty excited about this, even though I don't own a Nintendo Switch. I do intend to buy one. This might just even be a little bit more inspiration for me to get out and get one. I will say that Square Enix has been pretty successful with his past endeavors doing remakes, particularly ones that I liked. I liked the Dragon Quest remakes they did for the DS, 4, 5, and 6. Those were pretty good. The remakes of Final Fantasy 3 and 4 on the DS were pretty good. I say remake of Final Fantasy 3 loosely because it's actually the only US release that we ever got. Besides, I guess they put it out on PC and mobile now, but it's the same game. And then, the upcoming remake of Secret of Mana, that is actually getting some pretty good buzz as well. So, I'm pretty excited about this, as I said before, because as a retro gamer, I have a pretty deep love for these old franchises. I may have dropped Final Fantasy after 10, just because, I tried playing some of the newer ones. Even 10 was still a stretch for me. I'd actually say even after 8 is where it really went off. I mean, 9 was a throwback to the old ones. But once it kind of dropped the fantasy setting, I kind of lost interest in the Final Fantasy series. I know there's plenty of people that like them, but it's just really not my bag. I definitely have always been more of a Dragon Quest fan when it comes to Enix. And I'm just excited to see what we can get out of this. And I still have a deep love for the older Final Fantasies, so this might actually be good. Just a quick wish list. Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger has to be at the top of this. They've got to do a remake of that. It's one of their, I would say that's probably the best Square Enix game that there is. And I know that you've got all the different Final Fantasies, you've got Kingdom Hearts, you've got Dragon Quest, all these different series, but I still say that Chrono Trigger is definitely my favorite Square Enix game, and it sits there amongst my top SNES games. Next after that, I would say Final Fantasy VI is definitely one that we need to see done. It really hasn't gotten a proper remake. I know that there was kind of a reskin that came out on mobile and PC, which apparently has been kind of labeled as garbage. So, I'm a little skeptical about that. And then Dragon Quest 1 through 3 would really do to have a remake done of them. I know we had remakes on the SNES, and I know we've had the mobile remakes of the Dragon Quest games, but I would really like to see like a good 3D cell shaded remake of some of these older Dragon Quest titles. Kind of give it the love that that Final Fantasy Dragon Quest 8 kind of has. Dragon Quest 8 is probably my favorite of the Dragon Quest games. Based on the look of it is really nice, and its mechanics are not as complicated as some of the other Dragon Quest games, so it's easy to pick up and play. But I guess while I am kind of gushing about the possibility of this on the Switch, that would actually probably lead me to talking about my next topic. I'm going to kind of gush here a little bit about retro gaming and retro games, styled games, and why I kind of pick those over modern games. Now, don't get me wrong. Firstly, I want to say that I do have, I do like modern titles. Um, I don't own a more modern console because I play mostly on PC. But I'm a big Elder Scrolls fan. I'm dying for them to finally come out with a new numbered title soon. Bethesda, let's just do this, okay? Fallout, I'm a big fan of, and Borderlands. So I mean, these are just some of the franchises I like. I mean, as far as modern goes. So I mean, this isn't meant to show any hate on current gen games or AAA. Don't get me, wrong on that. I really do still think that they hold their weight and they really are what keeps the game industry going, of course. Um, but I guess like starting off when it comes to the retro titles, I think the biggest thing is the nostalgia factor that's involved with retro gaming. I mean, I grew up with these games, so these are going to be things that I love personally, and there's going to be a lot of memories involved in that. So, I mean, I'm going to be invested in them based on the fact that they are ones that I'm familiar with, and I I I love, and that goes for the fact that the franchises still continue too in the modern day too. Um, I mean, just last week I was talking about my excitement for Mega Man 11, just because it's a retro franchise that's getting touched, and we don't really see that outside of Nintendo. We're kind of seeing them steer away from that. Some of these older staples, like I mean, even Metal Gear, we're not going to see any much more of, which got a lot of love in the last few console generations. But you know, anyway. Uh, and then I guess my next thing about retro gaming my love is just there's an ease to it. There's no complex mechanics in the retro games. I mean, for the most part, you got a few face buttons and you don't have a whole lot of complicated rules to worry about. And it's just easy to pick up and play a retro game. I could pick a random game and just turn it on, and I mean I'm already playing it for the most part. Um, and here's one of the biggest things when it comes to retro gaming that I think really in the retro style games, even the indie titles that are out now that kind of have a retro feel to them. I think that time is probably actually the biggest factor involved right now with me. I don't have, when I sit down and play a game, I only have maybe an hour, maybe two at max to sit down and really play something. Just based on, commitments that I have with family, with work, with school. I've got enough going on that I have a minimal amount of time to sit and play a game. The problem when I play a AAA title is that I'm going to spend probably, on average, that first hour, the first time I sit down and play it, I'm going to waste that on cutscenes, tutorials, etc., and maybe get 15 minutes worth of gameplay time really in. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy a deep story in a game. Um, it's just now the time frame that I have really limits me to be able to do that. Um, y- you know, I think that if I would say, oh, you could skip cutscenes and things like that, but to me, I feel like I'm not getting the experience of a game that is cutscene based if I'm skipping the cutscenes. Oh, but what if you've played the game already? Still, I hate skipping cutscenes. It's like if I turned on a movie and I only played the parts like if I turned on a Star Wars film and I only turned on and I only watched the lightsaber battles. Don't get me wrong. Now, every once in a while, I might turn on a YouTube and say, "Oh, I want to watch the Yoda and Palpatine fight or something," just because, hey, quick YouTube watch and I can do that. But if I'm going to sit down and really, watch a movie, I'm going to watch it in its entirety. I'm not going to skip through parts of it that I think are boring. I think that that's just a waste. Anyway, moving on, I think that challenge is really kind of a thing I love about retro games too. Games back in the retro days and when I, in my heyday of gaming, back in my day, games were unforgiving. It was the difficulty that made the game last longer. And they had to do that, because I mean the game's substance in and of itself may only be a few levels, and if you beat it in a couple hours, well, you're done with it. There's not really anything else you're going to get out of it if you are sitting there and you beat it and, well, guess what? Now it just sits on a shelf and collects dust because it was a quick, easy game and now it's no fun. So, I mean, they made games difficult just for that fact so that you would get the replayability out of it. And it would take you several times to master an area and get better at it. Not all games in the retro time, most of the action-based games were like that. I mean, you did have your RPGs that still lasted longer, but even those, compared to now, were really more... the grinding is what really expanded those. I mean, if you think about the first Dragon Quest, if the grinding up to like level 20 wasn't involved, you probably would get maybe an hour to 2 hours, maybe about 2 hours out of the game if you did everything that you needed to do to beat it. And that's okay, whatever you had to artificially do to kind of extend the game, it was still fun. You didn't need the elaborate story. And also, like, you had minimal checkpoints, too. I mean, if you died, you might get a checkpoint at the middle of the level, but, I mean, there are points where you would go all the way back to the beginning of the level, or if you died, you might not have continues, and you might go all the way back to the beginning of the game. It just really depended on the game. But that's, that's really one of the biggest things for me. And then, I guess the aesthetic really is kind of a big draw for me. Again, this is probably a nostalgia thing, but to me, pixels really just scream video game to me more than these shaded and rendered figures. And I get the idea that we're trying to look as photorealistic as possible in the modern age, and that's good for your modern games, but to me, I just really like the 8-bit and 16-bit styles. Even with the newer indie games, I see that and I think, man, this looks like it might be a fun game. And, it might draw me into pick up a demo of it or watch some gameplay footage so I can get an idea of what the game's like, and then I might pick it up. So it's really just, it's a preference thing. And I guess another side note that I wanted to talk about was just, it's not even just the retro games themselves. It's really just the retro, the feel, or even the way the game plays. I guess a prime example this year for me was Zelda Breath of the Wild. I think that it particularly has a retro feel to it, even though, yes, open world game, really expansive, but to me it really threw back to the original Legend of Zelda, where you didn't know where things were. In the original Legend of Zelda, you were dependent upon, either having a guidebook or knowing friends out on the playground to tell you where things were, or you just trial and errored your way through the game and figured stuff out. Breath of the Wild, to me, especially because I got it at launch, really felt that way to me too. Because I mean, there was still some stuff on the internet, but it was minimal. So it was really, and I tried to stay away from any kind of assistance for a long time when I picked this up too, just because I wanted it to feel like I was going blind, going through the game blind, not going blind literally, but I really enjoyed that experience. It really made me feel like I was back in 1989 and playing the first Legend of Zelda and trying to figure out where things were and being excited when I found something new or found that new shrine. And it was just a really good experience. Another example, just sticking on the Legend of Zelda series, A Link Between Worlds was a really good game for the Nintendo 3DS. Now, honestly, I mean, this is a little bit nicer and polished looking, but it's still kind of the retro-ish look to it. It top down, very much played just like the Link to the Past, because this was a kind of a direct sequel to it. And I enjoyed this one because it was really it was far less linear than previous Zelda games. And that's kind of where my problem with the Zelda series kind of went, just based on the fact that starting with even A Link to the Past, starting with things started getting pretty linear. Especially once Ocarina of Time came out, you really were kind of being just your hand being held, telling you have to go here, you have to have this item to get in here, and the freedom of exploration was hampered quite a bit by that, compared to the original Legend of Zelda, and even from A Link to the Past to Ocarina, it got even less open. So I mean, I like the fact that A Link Between Worlds really, like, you could go to the dungeons in whatever order you wanted to, and I liked the fact that all the items were available to you if you wanted them. And I thought that was a really cool mechanic to the game, and it was really nice. Again, another retro throwback recently, I guess recently-ish. It's a little older now, but the new Doom that came out last year in 2016, that was that's kind of the first-person shooter, linear first-person shooter that I've really been waiting for. Don't get me wrong, I played through Halos 1 through 3 and really enjoyed those. I lost interest after the third one, just based on, again, it was really the time constraint of having to wait through cutscenes and things like that, and just everything that was going on. So I haven't picked up 4 or 5 because of it. But then, and then Call of Duty, I've really lost interest in that. They all seem to be the same game. I could be wrong, and all you Call of Duty fans could probably harp on me all you want, and that's fine. But Doom, this was the first person shooter I've been waiting for. It's fast paced. It feels it's modern, yet it feels like action packed enough compared, just like the old one. You were just constantly just moving and killing stuff, and no reloads, no standing behind a box to heal up because you got hit a few times, and if you get hit again, you're gonna die. It's a health base. It's not recovery based like the other ones are, and it's just constant movement and fast paced, and it's a really, really fun game. And I would love to see and I don't know why we haven't gotten any news, and maybe we have, and I'm just not as familiar with it because I don't follow the modern scene as much. But an expansion, or even a sequel coming soon would be awesome. Um, I think it was a good enough game that we could get another one. So, um, but anyway, that's kind of my take about retro gaming. Um, I just figured it'd be good for me to kind of talk at length about it, just because this is kind of my good sounding board to be able to do that, and I'm not standing in front of a game where I'm having to concentrate on the game while I'm playing, and I could really kind of gush about my love for retro games, and just I'm glad that maybe you guys stuck around to listen to that. Finally, we're gonna talk Star Wars, and because I mean that is this week, it's gonna be a big deal, I'm sure. Um, and I'm gonna talk about some of my thoughts about the Last Jedi and the upcoming the future of the series, and just some predictions maybe. I don't. I've been trying to avoid any spoilerage as I can. I want to go into this one not knowing what's going to be happening. Um, when The Force Awakens came out, I tried to stay away from it, but I did, but there was enough that kind of like eluded me to kind of predict that Han Solo was going to die. Now, okay, spoilers if the movie's been out for 2 years, so if you haven't watched The Force Awakens and you're listening to this, then well, I apologize, but been out long enough. Um, so I that was more of a prediction too, even though there was enough spoilers going around that I might have caught on to it, but I kind of predicted that would probably happen anyway, just based on I know that Harrison Ford wanted the character to die in the original trilogy and it never happened, and we needed to have some higher stakes, and he just seemed like the character that it would be uh, impactful enough to die. So, anyway, I said I don't want this film spoiled. My thoughts as far as what's going to happen in this film, I'm unsure. Um, I like I said, I've stayed away from all the various garbage. There's just so much clickbait out there that tries to pull you in, and I want to stay away from it. I want to go in blind and enjoy the film as it is. Um, Now, if you wanted to get some speculation out of me, just based on the characters and how I feel would be ideal, here's what I would say. Luke Skywalker. So, I mean, I know there's enough talk about, well, is he going to be good? Is he going to be bad? He's wearing dark. He's wearing light. We can't really, and then he's talked about wanting the Jedi to end. And here's what I think. I think that during his time alone, I mean, Luke's at the first Jedi Temple. I'm sure that he has picked up a lot of ancient knowledge about the Jedi, and maybe seeing what it originally was meant to be and what it has become, or it had become, and how it fell. And he's jaded. He sees the flaws in the light versus dark, uh, the light versus dark dichotomy, basically. And I think that I'd say he's jaded, and I think he does want the whole Jedi Sith, that dynamic to end. He wants it. The Force is the Force, and some people use it for good, some people use it for bad, but it's really worrying about channeling your feelings or, you know, not having attachments like the Jedi Order had and things like that. I think he feels that those were flaws that led it to its demise. And I feel like, you know, in the end, Luke wants good to prevail. But I don't think that he is worried about the light balance of the Force or anything like that. I think it's really, there's room for gray, I think. But anyway, that's my take on Luke. I think Luke will live through this film. I think he's got to go before the film's over, before this trilogy is over. And of course, Leia's got to go too, just based on, of course, the great Carrie Fisher, late Carrie Fisher, passing last year, which is, it's a really sad thing. I hope that they can do that justice based on and be sensitive enough. But Rey, I think Rey is going to end up being the strongest Force user yet. I think more powerful than Anakin. I think more powerful than the Emperor or Snoke or Luke. I think that she's going to be the big she's obviously going to be the big factor in this trilogy. And I think, based on trailers that I've seen, I've only really stuck with the teaser in the main theatrical trailer. I really have tried to avoid the TV spots. I only need that. That's enough taste for me to know. But based on those, I think Rey's going to have a big struggle between the light and the dark. I think she's going to be tested immensely, and I think that she will come very close to going to the wrong side. And I think that leads me to my next piece, and that's Kylo Ren. I think that Kylo Ren honestly will be, I think that he's intrigued with Rey. I think that he may even struggle with feelings for her. And I think that, coupled with his mother, is going to really, he's going to realize that killing his father was not the step that was needed for him to completely put away the light. I think that he is still going to immensely struggle with this. And I think that I feel like that in the end, Rey is going to come close, and I think she's going to resist. I think that in the end, that's going to cause, I think that will cause Kylo to see a change and see the ability to resist. I think that Kylo Ren is another character that's going to end up sacrificing himself somehow in this trilogy. And that really, I think, is based on my thoughts on the future of the series. We've already heard, that Rian Johnson is going to be creating the next trilogy after this one. And I would say, when he's already announced that it's going to not be a part of the Skywalker saga. So that tells me that we aren't going to have Luke. We definitely aren't going to have Leia. We're not going to have Kylo Ren because he's a Skywalker. I think, if you ask me, some people speculate prequel, some people speculate, somewhere off, far away, and it's a whole new story. But to me, I think that it's going to be a continuation, but it's going to involve newer characters. Like it's going to involve Rey. I don't think Rey is a Skywalker or tied to the Skywalkers by blood. I think it'll involve Finn, maybe Poe. It's going to be the newer. It's going to be the new cast of characters that they've introduced in this trilogy, and perhaps maybe it'll involve them, and they pass the torch on to another group, and that's just how this cycle continues. I think that based on the initial reviews that are coming in after the premiere of this film, apparently Rian Johnson's work has been just phenomenal, and I'm pretty excited to get to see this film this weekend. Unfortunately, I won't get to see it till late this weekend, but definitely we'll be talking about my thoughts on it on next week's episode of HeiseNerd Speaks. Let's move on to Han Solo, because we haven't talked about that, and that's the next film coming out. I'm a little skeptical about this film, just based on the as much as I hate to say it, but it's kind of been a bit of a dumpster fire for the production of this film. Just with the firing of the original Lord and Taylor as the directors, and I just would, Ron Howard's a great director. Don't get me wrong. I hope that he was able to pick the pieces up and make this happen. I just really hope we see, like I said, I hope we see really good things out of this. I know that there was difficulty with the actor playing Han Solo. I know he's new. He's fairly inexperienced, and I'm sure that with as iconic a role as this, he needed a leg up to be able to get some acting advice and make this work. So I just don't know. Of course I'm going to go see it. It's a Star Wars film. I'm hoping it's good. Of course. I don't know. This one kind of really is going to set the bar for me for these side films. I enjoyed Rogue One. It was a good film, but it still felt so distant. Even though it was a Star Wars film, it just felt it didn't have the same feel to it as the other films, and that's obviously on purpose. But it's definitely, it's a better film than the prequels are. But on the level of the original trilogy and The Force Awakens, I still wouldn't put it as high as those. I hope that this one has, this one's going to have a little more levity to it, of course. Rogue One was, it's a tragic story. It's just all that's going to be. So you knew what you were getting into when you walked into this thing. So I suppose we'll see. I'm excited about this. I know they are working on production on the Obi-Wan side film too. I'm just waiting for them to announce Ewan McGregor. Who else would they get to play Obi-Wan? Especially, I would hope to see that this is going to be a film regarding his time on Tatooine while Luke was growing up. Maybe. And that's what I would guess it would be. But I don't know. I digress. I'm always going to be a Star Wars fan. I'm not gonna turn my back on the franchise. I haven't given up on it. And I think that Disney is doing good things with it. I think Disney does great things with the things that with the franchises that they have, they have ownership of. And I'm excited about seeing what things they'll get ownership of. Hopefully in the very near future, considering that Fox is going to be possibly happening this week. So, but those are my thoughts for this week. might be a little bit shorter than last week, but I just wanted to, get a few things out like I always do on this show. And I, again, want to thank everybody that is listening. And just, thanks again. And I appreciate the feedback. If you want to like, comment, subscribe, definitely do that. And I look forward to doing the next episode. HeiseNerd, out.